So it's a pleasure to be joining you all today to talk about resilience. When we think about, and I go there a lot. You heard that I do personal training, so you're going to hear these metaphors today with resilience through the gym. The first thing that comes to mind, really, when we think about resilience, often is that muscular endurance. It's what allows us to push, to pull, right, to bend, to lift, to stay stable through all of these functional movements that we experience in everyday life. And as many of you know from your own practice, in terms of how you move and maybe your own fitness, it's not just about how much effort you put out. Resilience is also about your recovery. Okay, that's a key part of resilience. Without recovery, there really is no growth, right? What happens without recovery is that we evolve into fatigue. So now the same principle applies to our mental health. Mental resilience is our ability to endure, to adapt, and to recover from stress. It's what allows us to keep going through these long shifts, to adapt when situations change quickly, and to recover after those tough days so that you can come back with clarity and with strength. So just like physical strength, mental resilience doesn't just happen. It grows stronger when we train it, when we intentionally work those mental muscles. And that's what this session is all about. It's discovering how we can strengthen our resilience by using simple tools and connecting back to our core values. Okay. So in addition to what Carissa shared, I just want to add that probably the most important role that I've had is not mentioned, and that is that of being the mother of three wonderful, now grown men. So on my life journey, I carried forward many lessons, and one of them stands out so profoundly, and it came from motherhood. And that lesson is that investing in me pays dividends to others. So as a young mother of three little guys scattered between soccer fields, I recall very well feeling this sense of inadequacy, trying to be everywhere all at once. I do so much, but I need to have impact. And so I remember when I had this epiphany, and that was that, if those boys win their game, they're going to come home very happy and hungry. And if those boys lose their game, they're going to come home not so happy, but hungry. And someone needs to be on the other end of that. And that was just my moment of permission to prioritize and recognize I can't be everywhere all at once, and I need to pick and choose where I need to be most, and that's okay. And it serves me. And I recognize that when mama was good, those boys were good. And when mama wasn't so good, then the household felt it. And so this became my mantra, right? And I believe that the same is true for all of you, that all that you invest in yourself pays forward to all with whom you interact on any given day. And that's a lot what you give. Thank you. You are worth your own investment in yourself, and everyone else gets to benefit too. So on that note, I just want you to take a moment to recognize the incredible work that you do every day in our healthcare. Thank you. Facing uncertainty, complexity, real human needs, and just how much resilience that already requires. Okay, so as we launch into the topic, I want you to please remember that your healthcare begins with your own self-care. And one more thing before we dive in, because this is a very important distinction here, that today's session is not intended as any therapy or kind of medical intervention. Instead, this is an opportunity really to set aside your professional titles and your roles and just come together as human beings, as colleagues first. This is meant to be a safe space for your self-reflection. It's a chance to pause, to gather insights, and maybe pick up a few perspectives, hopefully, that you can carry forward in your own self-care. You are worth it. Okay, I say that again. I'll be asking for some light participation, as Carissa said, in the chat throughout the session. This just makes it fun and more engaging. So I hope that you feel safe enough to participate, and Carissa's going to help monitor that for us. And so for now, I just want you to relax your shoulders, relax your face, just relax, be present, and engage as much as you feel comfortable. So take in whatever resonates for you. So a quick look at what we'll be talking about today. We're going to define what we mean by resilience and why it's important to talk about it. We'll review the mental health continuum, which is, and actually we'll go into the stress response as well. And those are two key, I mean, I go over these in every presentation that I do because they're constant reminders. It's just flexing that awareness muscle and remembering how human we are. And I'm looking forward then to sharing some resilience strategies that I use, and they serve me very well. And so I call those strategies building our mental muscle, essentially resilience. And then I'm going to introduce a new angle by leaning into our core values to help build our resilience. And all this to continue to fuel our self-care, all this for our well-being. So by the end of our time together, my goal is to give you tools that you can use with your values as your strength to use them. So let's start by looking at why resilience matters. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I just want you to reflect as I go through them, internalize what I'm asking, and make it personal if you can. Okay, go deep. And if you are comfortable sharing, then please go ahead, but there's no pressure to do so. Okay, and Chris will be watching that. So just really go into your reflection. What do you think is important in your day-to-day life, right? Sorry, it's not responding here. Okay, the importance of resilience. It's our mental strength, and I want you to think about where you draw resilience from in your day-to-day life. Okay, why do you think resilience is important in your day-to-day life? That's the question.
Someone said being kind to myself.
I love it.
Others said self-care, so along the same lines.
Yeah, good. Yeah, being kind to yourself. That is fueling your resilience, right? It's really about giving you the strength to face challenges with confidence instead of feeling overwhelmed. This is what we're after when we talk about resiliency, because in day-to-day life, we're going to experience challenges. So next, I just want you to think about this. How often do your thoughts shape your feelings? Okay, for example, when you expect the worst, how do you feel? Or when you are frightened or when you are anxious.
Someone said horrible.
Yeah. That's a good word. Pretty much sums it up, right? It's a negative feeling. It's a negative emotion. Okay. Our thoughts set the tone for our emotions. And that means that by noticing and adjusting our thinking, then we can actually protect our well-being. Okay.
Others saying it affects their sleep. It's unpleasant. Thoughts shape their feelings majority of the time, good or bad.
Yeah. And so you can see that it becomes physical, right? Yes. Good or bad, thoughts shape our feelings, and how we feel is how we show up ultimately. And finally, resilience doesn't happen in isolation, okay? We grow stronger when we share strategies and we support each other. So I want you to think of one way that you've leaned into others. This is a hard one because we tend to want to show up so much for others, and especially each one of you doing the work that you do. This is in your blood. But how do you lean into others, right? Or if you want, how others have leaned into you in tough moments. Ah,
We have listening, shared experiences,
right on.
saying how I can help.
Right on, right? Yeah, that shared experience kind of almost, it doesn't, even if it can be overwhelming, it kind of brings it down and normalizes it, right? We're not alone. And so really, really important to recognize that. And ultimately, us coming together here is an opportunity to do so. We do grow stronger when we share strategies and we support each other. So that's what we're here to do today. Okay, I want you to think of this pyramid here as a roadmap for navigating challenges, both personally and professionally. And each of these layers builds up on the one below it. So at the base, we have our mental health. This is the foundation, because when our mental health is supported, we have the stability to grow in every other area. Okay, next is our self-awareness, knowing ourselves, knowing our triggers, knowing our strengths, knowing our limits allows us to respond thoughtfully rather than to react impulsively. So being self-aware helps us tap into the tools that we already have and seek new ones so that we can better overcome challenges. This is resiliency in action. And then above that, we have what I call flexing your mental muscle. And this is about practicing those strategies, right? Recognizing what works for you, noticing stress signals, managing expectations, reframing, all that helps us make better decisions and protect our well-being. And we're going to do a deeper dive on all of those. Next is clarifying personal values. And these are our guiding principles, what truly matters to us. And again, we're so unique that some of them we'll find are pretty similar and consistent, but many of them are really unique to us. And that's part of self-awareness again. Our core values influence how we make decisions, how we interact with others, and how we approach challenges. And when we lose sight of our values, we often feel unsettled or anxious. Okay, we're gonna do a deeper dive there as well. And then at the top, we have resilience at the top of the pyramid. So with a strong foundation, with our self-awareness, with flexible mental strategies, with clear values, we can strengthen our ability to navigate challenges and to recover from whatever setbacks we encounter in a day. And this pyramid it's not just a theory, it's a practical tool. So today we're going to explore each layer and how it contributes to staying resilient in the face of stress, in the face of change, in the face of uncertainty. And by the end of the session, you'll have actionable ways to strengthen each one of those layers so that you can stay grounded, you can respond more effectively, and continue to move forward with clarity and with more confidence. Okay, so let's take a moment to check in with our mental health. This continuum, I'm sure many of you have seen this before. It's a constant reminder that our mental health isn't fixed. It's on a continuum. We're always moving back and forth along it. So green is when you're feeling good, things are going as expected. You know, throughout the day, we naturally move into yellow because we're challenged, we're working. This is good. Yellow is not bad. But then we get back into green and, life ebbs and flows. And sometimes we might even move into orange, right? Daily events that keep us reacting and responding. And that's also part of life. For example, a personal example, if I'm presenting a virtual seminar and my computer freezes on me, that triggers the stress response in me. I feel those symptoms. How I respond in that moment shapes the outcome. Okay, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. If stressors, though, persist, the impacts can affect our well-being, and we may slide into the red zone. Extended time in red may require medical support, and that's okay, without blame or without judgment. We want, however, to manage ourselves as much as possible before reaching that point. Some people wonder how they ended up in the red, right? They think, this isn't me. I don't understand what's going on, right? It feels like it was sudden, but the reality is that it does come on gradually. There are times where there are sudden traumatic events that can take us right from green into red without question, but that's not the focus today, right? We're talking about our day-to-day ebb and flow and our reactions to daily life. Thankfully, most daily stressors do build gradually. And the good news is that because these shifts are gradual, we can have interventions at any point in time if we notice the signs. And we're going to talk more about that. So wherever you are on the continuum today, this is not a judgment. Self-awareness is key. By recognizing where we are, we can reach into our resilience toolkit. Strategies like what you mentioned, self-care, stress management, and what we'll talk about, core values, to reduce your stress and move back towards green. So just take a minute to reflect where you feel today. This simple awareness is foundational. It's a foundational step in building your resilience. So we've reflected on where we might be on the mental health continuum. Let's look at what actually happens in our bodies and our minds when we do experience those the stress, the triggers that bring on the stress response. Okay, so during the stress response, there's certain symptoms in our bodies that amp up, like our heart rate, our breathing, our muscles preparing to respond quickly to whatever the challenge is, right? We know it is fight, flight, freeze, that the body just goes into autopilot, which is great by design. At the same time, other bodily functions slow down or shut down. digestion, immune function, and many times even higher level thinking, right? If you're crossing the street and a car comes out of nowhere, you run one way or the other, you run, you keep going forward, you turn around and run back. You don't really stop and count the steps one way or the other. Your biology doesn't allow you to stop and consider which way to run. You just bolt. This is a natural biological response designed to help us survive immediate threats. Wonderful. The challenge in our modern life, though, especially, I'm going to say, I mean, you face it all the time in healthcare, is that stressors are often ongoing, right? There's shifts and patient needs and administrative pressures, and the systems that are in our body that should turn off afterwards sometimes stay activated longer than they need. And likewise, those systems, biological systems that turn off, also stay turned off longer, and then can ultimately cause your immune system to be more vulnerable, and things just don't function the way that they should, right? You are in healthcare, you know this, but you need reminders because you're people too, and often we don't take care of ourselves the way we take care of others. So this is our reminder of what's really going on when we experience stress. Okay, understanding this helps us see why resilience isn't just a mental concept, it's physiological. When we know our stress response is there, we know it works, we are actually experiencing stress, that's a good thing, because our body is doing what it needs to do. But when we are aware of what's going on, when we are aware of our own triggers, we're noticing those signals, we can recognize those signals, and then we can manage them more effectively and recover more intentionally so that we can stay on the healthier side of the continuum. Okay, we want to get into green as much as possible. And when we understand our biological response to stress, we have a much better chance at managing the impact. And this leads us into a deeper discussion around self-awareness. So we've seen the stress response. Let's talk more about self-awareness. Awareness is what gives us the choice to use our stress signal as information rather than letting it run the show. So I'm not talking about the car that comes out of nowhere. I'm talking about all of the other events that happen in a day that are non-life threatening, but they continuously trigger us. We know that stress can arise from work or personal situation. It can even be triggered by our thoughts. Has anyone ever had a nightmare? This is the best example that I can think of how our thoughts can trigger fear or anxiety pretty intensely in the silence and in the safety of our own beds. So we know that the trigger results in physical and emotional reactions. But the way we process those events is where our power lies. This is the space where intervention is possible. Okay, how we respond depends on the resilience strategies that we have available, those tools that we can draw on when we notice those early signals. So self-awareness is the skill that lets us recognize stress as information. So I'm going to ask you here in the chat, how do you know when you've been triggered? How do you recognize that your stress response has been activated? What are the signals, whether physical, emotional, or behavioral, that tell you that stress is present?
Someone says they feel it in their chest, their body, their stomach's upset, breathing changes, wanting to pace,
Wanting to pace. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
ringing in my ears,
Okay.
anxiety, irritable gut, fear and panic,
Yeah.
agitation, rage, muscle tension.
Fantastic. Thank you for your honesty. Yeah, it shows up and it manifests in so many different ways. And many of us have our defaults in terms of how we respond, right? So again, the diversity in all of us based on our histories, our experiences, our genetic makeup, right? Our predispositions. Well, what's common is that once we've recognized that we've been triggered, the next step is to identify the emotion that we're experiencing. And each of those emotions often comes as a default reaction, right? That if you are stressed, it could show up as an emotion that is rage, as suggested here. Thank you. So, for example, if I feel defensive, my default might be to push back abruptly or shut down the conversation. And of course, that usually leads to negative outcomes. But here's the important part. Okay, if I pause and recognize that this is a moment of opportunity, very quick pause. The more we practice it, the better we get. And the shorter that pause is, then I can choose to apply a resilient strategy. And that gives me a chance to shift the outcome. So instead of fueling the stress, then I can land in a more constructive space. And it doesn't just serve me, of course, it serves the whole situation and the people around me. Okay, so before I share a few strategies with you, I want to hear from you again now. Share in the chat, what resilient strategies do you already know that you have in your toolkit? Things that you draw on that help you shift towards a positive outcome when you experience those triggers that you've mentioned. What do you draw on? What's your strategies that you use when you
Someone
feel?
said breathing exercises, grounding techniques, pressure points, going for a walk, expressing music on an instrument,
Okay,
getting some tea, going to bed earlier, exercise, take
right
some
on.
space.
Right on. Good. Yeah, those mentioned require actually physically maybe removing yourself from the situation. They're very good recovery strategies so that you're dealing with it day to day to day, probably lots of yellow going into orange, but you take the time that you need in order to have that recovery. That is brilliant. Wonderful. Very, very powerful. So the stressful event, the key is that the stressful event is never the end of the story, right? The outcome depends on the tools that you choose to apply in between. And that's why practicing, collecting, and continuously practicing strategies ahead of time is so important, right? So that they're ready for them when we need them most. Okay. So you're recognizing your stress signals as your stress signals and your triggers, right? This is information. You're choosing intentional strategies for healthy coping, and then you're shaping the outcome so that it's a positive outcome, right? So that you are responding and not necessarily reacting, right? That impulse to run isn't what's running the show. Let's dive deeper into how, right? Up to this point, we've talked about the importance of mental health and how it's on a continuum, and all this to tune into our self-awareness and how our strategies influence whether stress leads to a positive or negative outcome. And this is building resilience. And it's not just something that we're born with, it's a skill that we can build. This is our mental muscle, okay? So resilience is more than just bouncing back from tough times, and the strategies that we can apply when we have the time for rest and relaxation, this helps us bounce back and come back into green. But it's also about using those challenges to grow wiser, to grow stronger, and more confident in ourselves. So it's kind of looking at the stressors and the experiences in a bit of a different light. And we're going to talk about reframing. This is a really great opportunity to do that. So I want to share 4 practical strategies that I found to be both effective and accessible for most people. And think of these ways to build your mental muscle. These are tools that help us not just endure challenges, but to grow stronger through them. But like any muscle, okay, we have to keep flexing it. So we're going to talk about, first is to notice the signals by tuning in early to signs of stress like tension and fatigue. Then we learn to manage expectations, and this helps us avoid unnecessary disappointment and frustration. Then we practice reframing, and that helps us transform setbacks into growth opportunities. And where in a split second, we can shift from a negative to positive outcome. In a split second, we don't need to go home to recover. Right there, we can work on that recovery. And then finally, we're going to tap into core values. And this one goes deep, where what means most to you in your life helps you guide your decisions and your responses, providing you with that stability in challenging times. So I'm going to ask you to get ready to participate again in the chat. We're going to start with a simple scenario. Okay, so here we go. You're driving along and the fuel light comes on. What do you do? This is more play the game. You're driving along and your fuel light comes on. What do you do?
Panic, stop on the side of the
Okay,
road.
after you panic.
Look for the next gas
There you
station.
go. Now we're done.
Tell my husband.
Okay. Oh, well, there you go. You've got a good resource there. That's it.
Call the dealership.
Okay, you
Stop,
need
look at your
gas.
phone. Yeah.
You need gas, right? So most people would say, yeah, pull over, refuel, find a gas station, or at least start planning to find the next gas station. Why? Because that light is information. The light isn't a problem. The trigger, the signal is not a problem. That's the signal. And you can ignore it, okay, and have a negative outcome, or you can prioritize refueling and have a positive outcome. Okay, I've got another one for you. And I don't know which one's worse. I think this one in today's day and age is probably worse. This is if your phone hits like a 1% battery. You glance at your phone, you didn't realize, and it's at 1%. What do you do?
Use a charger,
Okay.
airplane mode, and charge it.
Ah, there you go. Yeah,
Plug it in.
that's it, right? You scramble to plug it in, right? You switch to low power mode, like airplane mode. You shut down the non-essentials, maybe. Again, the phone isn't broken. It's giving you a signal that it needs attention. Okay, this is really important. There's nothing wrong with signals. And I need to drive that message home, okay, because we're gonna personalize that. So in the chat, I want you to share another built-in warning signal in our day-to-day that we don't often stop to really think about them, but they're everywhere. So I want you to think about other built-in warning signals. What are warning signals in life, in our system? And I'll give you an example. I'm going outside of our personal self here. So for example, traffic signals, right? We see a signal of a yellow flashing light, and we prepare to start to slow down in anticipation that the light is changing. We've been given a signal, we respond to the signal. Similarly with pedestrian crosswalks, right? There's a signal, we respond to the signal, we look for the pedestrian either side, we slow down to come to a stop. What are other signals?
Got a fire alarm,
Yeah.
railway signals, child crying.
Right. Yeah, child crying, fantastic, fantastic.
Hunger.
Hunger, I love that one. I've got that one here in my examples as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we got pain in body, dog barking, headaches.
Yeah, these are fantastic. They're everywhere all the time, and we don't even stop and think about them as signals, right? They're life, right? In life, we're constantly being signaled and we're responding to the signals, right? You mentioned the fire alarm, smoke alarm. When it beeps, we don't ignore it, we check it out. We do evacuation drills, actually. We practice them. They're drills. They're the practice. When we hear an alarm, we respond because we've been trained to respond to that, right? So do you see where I am going here? There's a signal, there's some training, and then there's a response. And with that response, we set ourselves up for better outcomes. Okay? So what about weather signals, right? You hear thunder, you see clouds coming in, rolling in. Again, we're conditioned to maybe put away our outdoor cushions or whatever it is that you would do in anticipation of rain. Okay, so when you think about it in your own workday, I'm sure you can find a lot of examples where you notice the signal and then you respond. Maybe it's an alarm, maybe it's a patient monitor, an alert on your computer, or even a colleague's tone of voice that you're responding to, right? You notice the signal and then you act. You're doing what you're trained to do. Okay. We also have biological signals, as you pointed out here, right? In terms of hunger, right? Does anyone, you have your warning signs, whether it's you get jittery, maybe your stomach growls, and then what do you typically do? Maybe even if you don't have too much time, hopefully you respond accordingly and you get something in your system just to abate that, or if you're not already primed to have a meal, right? You'll grab a bite, you'll do something. Because you don't want to end up getting into hangry mode. And this is where we're going to see some negative outcomes. So when we stop and think about it, as we are doing here together now, we recognize that we're always being signaled, both mind and body. And like tension in shoulders, irritability, brain fog, exhaustion, these mental signals, there are low battery lights. And the key is to recognize that these signals early before we hit empty, because that recognition is our intervention point. And once we notice, we can choose the right recovery or refueling strategy. And it's within all of us to continue our training. We just need to be intentional about doing that training. And the great news here is that maybe, as you said, it's a breath or two in between tasks. Maybe it's that short walk, maybe it's setting boundaries, or maybe planning something restorative, as you all shared after a hard day's work. Today, we're focusing on emotional signals. And earlier, I asked you how you know when you have been triggered. Now, remember what I said here. You have signals, right? Whether they're physical, emotional, or behavior, that's telling you that stress is present. But rather than fear it or be upset by it, now we're looking at it as it's just a signal. There's nothing wrong with it. It's telling me something, and I need to react. I need to respond accordingly. And I can do that because I will train myself to do that. So the key first step in building resilience is noticing those signals, and it allows you to respond with intention, and that's taking back power. Okay, we can catch those signals early. We give ourselves a chance to learn what we need to do to refuel and keep going. And I want to clarify here that we don't necessarily have the luxury to break away from stressors at any given moment to refuel. Okay, if possible, great. But what I'm talking about here is how to manage our reactions in the moment as best we can. And that's where I get to share with you one of my favorite tools here, which is managing expectations. When you learn to use this resilient strategy well, it's like instantly taking a load off. And I want you to imagine now a situation where you've set a certain expectation. Okay, follow me here on the slide. You set a certain expectation, but reality doesn't match it. That mismatch between your expectation and reality is often what creates stress or frustration or disappointment. I call it D. So your D, your level of disappointment at any given time, is equal to your E minus your R. And how does D show up? D shows up in the feeling of dissatisfaction when your expectations or hopes don't materialize. It's a natural source of psychological stress and can trigger emotions like shame, failure, anger, blame, heartbreak, frustration, and on and on. So recognizing disappointment in you as a signal helps you pause, reflect, and choose how to respond rather than react automatically. Okay, there's something that you can do to shift the state of reality. Great, bring it up to meet your expectation. I'll give you an example here. A universal one that we can all relate to is expecting a smooth commute. Okay, something pretty basic, and then getting stuck in traffic. Okay, we are stuck in traffic. We're in delay. The reality is that the traffic is not moving. The stress comes from fighting against what is. But when we accept that the commute will take longer today, then we're moving our E, actually. We're bringing our E closer to reality. And this instantly helps us to release some of that frustration. Hence, we have a smaller D. And we can find clarity to decide who do we need to inform then with this reality. And then maybe ultimately we turn up the tunes and we just enjoy the ride. Okay. And I'm not suggesting that it's okay to be late all the time, but when it does happen, then we can experience a negative outcome or we can apply a strategy for our well-being. And so using the same example here, I personally have noticed that traffic patterns have changed a lot here in the Lower Mainland. There's so much more, there's construction and a lot more congestion on the roads. What used to take me 45 minutes to get into the city can be upwards of an hour now. And I can continue to feel stressed and frustrated by this by always leaving at the same time that I would have when it took 45 minutes. Or I can move my E to match the R of 1 hour commute and then plan accordingly. And now I'm prepared and the stress is released. So this change in mindset, right, just moving my E enables me to do better and feel better. Okay, here's another universal one. Planning a big outdoor day with the expectation of sunny weather, but waking up to pouring rain. It's a reality. The sooner we accept that we can't change the reality of the rain, the sooner we're able to pivot. So instead of clinging to the disappointment, we realign our expectations. Maybe we find an indoor activity, maybe we put up tarps, or embrace the rain in whatever new way that we can. That pivot is what opens the door to constructive solutions and keeps the day positive as much as possible for us, okay? We can reduce the stress that is brought on by any given situation by moving our E sometimes. Just got to move that E. Okay, and now we'll move into another strategy, a muscle to flex for resilience. At first glance, just describe what you see. Take a minute. What comes to mind? Just go ahead and just throw it in the chat. What do you see?
Someone said the sun is coming, sunshine is coming, sun rays.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Others say darkness, dark cloud, storm
Right.
brewing.
Right. Just at first glance, right? And you can see what this exercise is all about, right? It's about, we're looking all at the same image, but we could be seeing different things at any given time. So, we have the opportunity to see differently if we change our lens intentionally. And so reframing really isn't art. It's a technique that helps you change the meaning of something at any given time. And by changing that meaning, you can change the way that you feel about it. Okay, so you can change your experience of it when you change the way you feel about it. So essentially, we use this resiliency filter to decide whether a situation creates again, a positive or a negative experience for us. It's not about denying reality, it's about choosing how we interpret it and respond to it. So here we go. Imagine that you receive constructive feedback that initially feels like criticism to you. Okay, you get this defensive mode, and that's your trigger to say, I'm experiencing something that's a signal, what's going on. Through reframing, you might see it as an opportunity to learn and grow rather than a personal attack, right? Just that shift alone can change the stressor into something now that's empowering as opposed to diminishing. Another example that maybe we can all relate to is as we roll into the darker and wetter season, reframing the dark and the rain. And I remember when I moved from Montreal, people would say to me all the time that, oh my God, it rains so much in Vancouver. How do you handle that? And I looked around me and I see green everywhere. And when people come and visit from Montreal, they say it's so green here. BC's beauty is designed with rain. And so I refer to the rain as liquid sunshine. Reframe right there. So I want to share with you a personal example of both moving my E and reframing in action. So this was last Christmas. I planned a painting party for my son's partners. I've got 3 boys. I got to be with the 3 girls and asked them each to invite a friend. So there was more girls. It was a true girls' night. That morning, the power went out. And the power goes out, it doesn't usually go on for very long. It seldom happens, and when it does, it's not for too long. So as time passed, I was feeling a little bit stressed, a little disappointed, because I had intended to make a certain meal, but without power. Then I tried to imagine, okay, how are we going to paint if we can't see? So I thought maybe we're not going to paint, we'll just hang out. I'm not really sure what we're going to do, but it was causing me a little bit of anxiety. At first it was disappointing, and my E, of course, was not being met for what I had planned for the day. So I moved the E and I defrosted meat, and we barbecued that. I cut up fresh vegetables and set up a salad bar. I pulled out every candle that I could find, and we reframed our evening into paint by candlelight. And so reframing allowed us all to shift our focus from what went wrong to what could be enjoyed. And it turned a potential setback into a memorable and joyful experience. So much so that they asked if we could do the same this year and just not have lights, which I don't know that I'll do. So when we notice our signals and we use our tools like moving our E and reframing, it helps us to respond to events for healthier outcomes. That's what we're here to talk about today. We're flexing that mental muscle and developing habits to build resiliency. So now we're going to talk about resilience, a tool that doesn't always get the attention that it deserves, and this is values. Okay, so core values. Core values are like a compass for us. Okay, what does a compass do? It helps us reorient when we feel lost. It points us back in the right direction. We can find the right direction by using our compass. And similarly, our core values redirect our thoughts to what matters most to us, and it gives us a way to reset and re-strategize. So when challenges show up, our values ground us. They influence how we feel, shape the way we respond, and guide how we reframe situations. So think of it this way. When we're moving along the mental health spectrum, maybe sliding from green into orange, our values can help us decide which tool from our resilience toolkit we need to reach for. And then over time, coming back to these values helps to strengthen our ability to recover and adapt. Okay. And that's why I'm taking time to clarify your core values can be so powerful for you. So we're going to do a values exercise together. When we talk about core values, it can be as simple as asking ourselves. So ask yourself, what is truly important to me in life? Right? At first, it might seem like, oh, there's a lot. But when you start to dig deep, you realize that there's some pretty common themes that show up in everything that you do. So I'm going to share some of mine to make it real, and then I'm going to ask you to share some of yours. Okay? So get ready to share yours as I go through mine. So for me, self-care, family, curiosity, reciprocity, trust, and strength in numbers. These are core values that show up in so many of my choices and so much of what I do. They show up naturally. So the actual words might shift a little bit over time, but they've been pretty consistent themes for me. And they show up in what I do with passion, right? How I connect with others and how I respond to challenges. It takes some reflection, but it's such a valuable exercise. We talk about being authentic. There's no greater authenticity than living and loving through your core values. So how did reciprocity make my list, for example? I realized in life that relationships are based on giving and taking. And bear with me on the muscle analogies, but here it is, that to maintain a healthy balance in relationships, it's my belief that we have to flex our giving muscle as much as our taking muscle. Not necessarily tit for tat. That's not what I'm talking about. So I'll give you the example of being a mother, right? Of course, I'm going to give my energy and my soul to those boys. And the balance, though, is the love that I feel. It's the joy that I have in their success. It's seeing them grow and prosper. So there's definitely a reciprocity there. This is, I'm fueling in and I'm getting something out, right? It's not about doing for them and they do for me. It's about recognizing that I also get something out of this effort. Okay, we go to work, we get paid, and hopefully we feel good about our work. Maybe a sense of pride or knowing we've made a difference in someone's life. All of this counts towards the reciprocity in terms of how we show up at work. And of course, there's been times when I realize that I get nothing or feel nothing in return. This is my opportunity to maybe reevaluate and maybe let go of something that takes from me without anything coming back. And this is quite revelatory, right? This is where the work of really tuning into your core values starts to take shape for you. I'll share with you also, a family a story of a personal story of hosting family dinners over the course of many, many years while those boys were young and growing up, birthday parties for every event, every celebration, and constantly hosting. And one time I was lamenting about just how much work it is. And my father said, "Why are you doing it?" And I said, "Well, I mean, I'm doing it because it's his birthday." And he said, "Oh no, but why are you doing it?" I said, "Well, because it's important to celebrate." He said, "Why is it important?" I said, "Well, because I want them to be celebrated and know that they're loved. It's an opportunity to recognize them. I want them to know that family is important and we come together." And he said, "You want?" I said, "Yeah, I do." He said, "There you go. That's your reward." So that's reciprocity in action. Our core values are more than just words. They're resilience tools. Okay. They anchor us in times of stress. They provide stability and direction when we feel overwhelmed, reminding us of what truly matters. So, decision making, stress will cloud our judgment. Our values can serve as a compass, helping us choose which way we want to go to align with what feels good to us, right? This helps reduce the regret that accumulates over time. Motivation and strength, we are energized. To keep going when things get hard, pulling us back to the bigger picture. Our values get us there. Living our values builds trust in ourselves and with others, and it reinforces confidence. It gives us emotional resilience, the sense of identity and belonging, which helps manage anxiety and stress when we're living in truth with what we really feel. And that's why clarifying values, not just naming them, but using them, aligning them with what's important and how you show up, becomes such a powerful foundation for resilience. And so, what are we seeing coming through here in the chat? Can't wait to hear.
Yeah, we have connection, contribution, harmony, adventure, integrity,
Oh, gorgeous.
family,
Good.
faith,
Keep going, keep going.
fulfillment, and peace,
Beautiful.
loyalty, honesty,
Yeah,
authenticity.
authenticity. Authenticity is, in fact, living in line with your values. Beautiful. When you stop and take time to think about what's important to me, what shows up wherever I go. I told you I'm a personal trainer. I train in groups. I believe in strength in numbers. I believe in the power of the strength in coming together as community. And that's what we're doing here, all being on the same session at the same time and maybe coming back to it later. But sharing this experience together, all of this builds into my strength in numbers, as does, the rest of my values. They show up wherever I am and they help guide me. When I feel that something's off kilter, I'll look back and say, how does it align with what's important to me? Is it in alignment? And when I find that connection, I feel better. And when I find there's a disconnect, well, then it's an opportunity to say, okay, maybe there's a shift that needs to happen here. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And now, so we've reflected on our personal values. We can continue to take time to think about own our own core values after the session and ongoing, I hope, but we're going to zoom out and connect this to the workplace. And so I know that there's people here that are diverse across the province in different roles and different departments. So I want you to think about this exercise in terms of the group that you work most closely with, your team, your unit, or your department. When you think about your own team, what values guide how you work together? What values show up in your combined efforts with the team that you work with? So just pop a few words in the chat, and they might overlap with your personal values or they may be different. Just go with what comes to mind instinctively first.
I have communication, information,
Yeah.
collaborative, contribute, respect, positivity, empathy, work ethic.
Beautiful. Yeah, not a surprise in the healthcare setting. Your team values often reflect so much of the human side of care, right? And the practical side of working together under pressure, right? Yeah, lots of compassion there. Whether it's putting patient care and empathy at the heart of decisions or with each other in terms of what you experience in a day. Respect for patients, of course, families and colleagues, regardless of roles or backgrounds at any given time. Right, lots of accountability, I'm sure, owning responsibilities, following through. Integrity, I put my list together in terms of what I know to be true in the world of healthcare, and I cannot thank you enough. Doing the right thing with integrity, even when you're under pressure, adaptability, being able to pivot when situations change unexpectedly, which I'm sure happens a fair bit. Trust, so knowing who you can count on in high stakes situations, which colleagues to go to, where to turn. I have no doubt that excellence is present, striving for the highest standards in care and in teamwork. And communication, we saw that loud and clear, right? Clear, respectful, and transparent information sharing. So this exercise gives us a sense of how our personal values translate into team values in the workplace. And so now when our actions and our goals and our daily efforts line up with our teams or the organizational values, we experience a sense of harmony. It creates this bridge between what we deeply care about and the meaningful goals of our workplace. Okay, so why does that matter for resilience? Because when challenges arise, and they always do, around and definitely in healthcare, values give us a reset point, right? They remind us this is what matters, this is why I'm here, even in the middle of unpredictability. Values can help bring you back to center and stay grounded. So in other words, the shared goals and the connection to each other gives us strength to endure and overcome in a much healthier way. And that's what team resilience looks like when it's grounded in core values. Okay, and it's worth an opportunity to talk to each other and share with each other, share with your team, open the conversation and talk about your values, about what's your North Star as a team. What do you hold valuable in terms of staying grounded and feeling it supported and giving support? So our core values don't just guide how we respond to challenges, they also shape how we care for ourselves. And we're going to come back to this. That connection between values and self-care is often overlooked, but it's at the heart of true resilience. You know what truly matters to you. So your self-care is very personal. It's not about copying what anyone else does. It's about honoring what restores you. And we saw examples there. We had different examples listed that you shared in the chat. because self-care is not a one size fits all, right? What energizes one person might drain another person. So tune into your core values to create self-care practices that feel genuine, that actually nurture you, and that leave you ready to face your day rather than feeling like just another item on a to-do list, right? That I really should be doing this, or I should be doing this, but it doesn't really work for you. And so, for example, as I said, you saw family and strength in numbers, and this shows up in my fitness, right? As I shared with you, and the fact that I train with my boys, there's family showing up again. I'm not intentional about making that happen. I recognize what feels good to me, and I do chase that down as I continue to grow and build and live. So that's my motivation to work out. Family, strength in numbers, it all comes together. So as we wrap up, we want to bring this together. Our values don't just shape who we are, they guide how we care for ourselves and how we show up at work. When self-care is aligned with what truly matters to us, it's not just a check mark, right? It's a source of strength. And this alignment helps us to set our boundaries, protect our energy, and stay grounded in the middle of the challenges that we will invariably face. And that's really the key. By honoring core values, you build resilience from the inside out. And always remember that when you are well, everyone around you benefits. And so with that in mind, we're going to move into a quick summary now of what we covered together. Here we are, just a very short, under an hour. We covered so much. We talked about what resilience really means, our ability to endure, adapt, recover, both physically and mentally. We reminded ourselves that our mental health shifts daily. Keep that image from green to yellow to orange to red, because with early awareness, then you can have those interventions to come back to green. We talked about self-awareness, where we dug into how recognizing our own signals, right? Signals aren't bad things. Signals are signs. Signals are what we respond to, and we do it every day, all the time, without realizing. But we need to do it for ourselves and our mental well-being. We looked at a couple of building mental muscle practical tools where we notice those signals, we manage expectations, and we reframe setbacks. Remember, sometimes it's as simple as just moving your E when you're facing something that you can have no influence over. And then we tapped into our core values. We looked at how they serve as our compass, guiding how we make decisions, how we respond to stress, how we care for ourselves. We looked at the teamwork alignment there, and always coming full circle to self-care. Recognizing that we are worth it. Okay. And so at the beginning, I shared with you that my goal is to help you recognize your greatest strength is already yours, right? It's who you are, right? That's the gift that you take with you today, that you are so much already. Just tap into your tools and nurture yourself. So with that, I will wrap it up, and we have a few minutes for questions or comments. Over to you, Carissa.
Yeah, we did have one question in the chat here that I can see right now, and someone asked earlier, can a change in professional field or environment have a strong positive impact on mental health, or is it just a form of avoidance?
Oh, that is such a deep question. And you know what I would say to that? I would say that it's really entirely personal. You know your truth, right? You know, and maybe going through, it's a great opportunity to put the test of your values, right? Really lay them out, be true, honor yourself, and then see how do they align with the work that you're doing? How does it align? You might find that there's a missing synergy that comes to life for you, where maybe it's a reframing that needed to happen, or you might find that there's really a misalignment there, and that you don't feel enriched and whole through this. And there's no shame. Many people make career changes, and there's so many stories about, I mean, this is life. Well, we shift, we change, we make choices. But when we make choices that are true to us, it's hugely powerful. So I wish I could answer that for you more precisely, but it's within you to explore. Yeah. Anything else?
Sure. See lots of thank yous in the
Yeah,
chat, so
you're
that's
most
great.
welcome.
Best lunch hour spent on myself. Thank you so much.
Wow.
So
Okay,
that's
that's
awesome.
peer invoking. Thank you.
Um, someone asks, I have a family member that has mental challenges. It affects me a lot, and I'm not always happy. What should I do? So can you give any advice
Oh,
there?
wow. My gosh. Okay, so listen, we have what, a minute? It's like I cannot answer that in a minute. as I would wish to. What I could say though is that you have tools available to you through your benefits. I would say use those tools, right? You have an employee assistance plan, you have access to professional counseling, even just short-term counseling, just to help you get your thoughts together. But my answer from me to you is to shift your E, right? Because maybe you're asking too much of yourself because your E is out of range. Those are hard realities to accept. But when we accept a reality, my goal is to calm you down and to give you the space to be able to make the choices within the reality that you live in. And so I would say just see what you can do to move your E, be kind to yourself, and then reach into the resources and support systems that are available to you.